1997 and Tony Blair enters Downing Street as Prime Minister with the promise that things can only get better. The new Labour government brought not just a new PM but new promises and a new image in the era of cool Britannia. More than 25 years on, we're getting some fresh glimpses of what was going on beneath the surface in the new Labour era. Documents released into the National Archives reveal some of the private communications within government, including some relating to Blair's wardrobe.
Tony at Topshop. There's something rather self-conscious about Tony Blair when he's being mildly fashion-conscious. There's been talk of a re-styled Prime Minister at the Commonwealth Summit in Queensland. In fact, Tony Blair has been kitted out in Paul Smith suits for a while now.
In this document, Tony Blair was advised to pay back thousands of pounds to clothing designers after receiving heavily discounted garments. A friend of his wife, the style advisor Carol Kaplan, negotiated to buy clothes at wholesale rates for the couple. A Downing Street official writes, "We are not arguing that anything has been done wrong, and indeed nothing has. The issue is one of public perception." The concern being that the Blairs received expensive clothes at prices not normally available to the public. The Prime Minister was advised to repay £1,116 to Paul Smith and £6,532 to Nicole Farhi. We don't know exactly what course of action was taken.
The ITV Weekend News with Nicholas Owen.
Good evening. The battle for Iraq entered a new phase today as Allied forces extended their control of the country.
The Iraq War became a defining event of Tony Blair's time in Number 10. This communication from January 2003 was sent to Westminster by the British ambassador to the US, Sir Christopher Meyer. He tells the government it is politically impossible for Bush to back down from going to war in Iraq this spring, and that President Bush believed that destroying Saddam is a crusade against evil.
And now he's got to understand his day of reckoning is coming, and therefore he must disarm voluntarily. I hope he does.
Less than 2 months after this confidential message was sent, Britain and the US began the invasion of Iraq. The current US ambassador, Lord Mandelson, was another leading, if controversial, figure within New Labour. By 2003, he had already been forced to resign twice from government. In April of that year, his friend, Lord Burt, wrote to the Prime Minister saying, "If you judge a return to government is not possible, then he would like you to consider appointing him as EC Commissioner." Peter Mandelson was given the role as UK's European Commissioner 4 months later. The newly released documents also detail how Blair felt the French President Jacques Chirac had tried to undermine the UK's efforts to put pressure on the dictatorial leader of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, and how the musician and campaigner Bob Geldof threatened to walk out of Blair's Commission for Africa, claiming it was not being allowed to form its own independent conclusions, saying, "Is this all some farcical political game played out at the expense of the wretchedly poor? If so, I ain't playing." The papers don't all date from the Blair years. In 1993, with John Major in Number 10, there was a debate over the future of the royal yacht Britannia. With the vessel reaching the end of its service, ministers had to decide whether to spend on a costly refit or even more on a costly replacement.
What is clear is that the Ministry of Defence, in the midst of deep budget cuts, does not want to have to pay for it. So talks are underway with the Department of Trade and the Foreign Office to see if some other government department thinks it's worth spending money on.
The documents include a suggestion from Buckingham Palace officials that the Prime Minister stress Britannia's inestimable value to the nation, although it makes it clear there has been no pressure placed on the government from Queen Elizabeth to build a replacement. The response from an official, though, was that to say that the royal yacht has been of inestimable value to this country will not be a helpful remark if ministers in due course decide not to replace Britannia. It wasn't just Tony Blair receiving discounted clothes that concerned officials. It's also revealed that, as a noted tennis fan, he received a Dunlop racket, although it didn't reach the £140 value limit for gifts. Officials did question a gift of a guitar from the lead singer of U2, Bono. In the PM's handwriting, he questions whether he would have to pay the full purchase price for it. A similar gift of an acoustic guitar from the President of Mexico, though, was a little less well received. On the note about its value, Blair wrote, "I don't actually use it." David Harper, ITV News.